to understand this
We'll put
Torah.
up the audio with in the new week.
Ready?
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
So in order to this one, we start with a pasuk not from this week's parasha, but it's a pasuk in Dvarim. Dvarim, when Moshe is repeating and summarizing the whole. So I start with we're live again. Yeah. Okay. We're live in Efrat. Good evening, everyone. We're live in Efrat. Mordecai Holtz sitting in for Charles or Shaul Sakal, who's not here. He's in America. So he's learning Parshat Chukat and Balak. We're going to learn just Balak.
He's still sending in shorts. So everyone check out the Spotify. This will be also on Spotify as well.
And so this learning, as always, should be in refuah and zchut for all those who need it. Yeshuot of every kind.
The soul should have all the yeshuot.
Amen.
And everything is available at the Zera Shimshon. Very easy to find us.
At the Zera Shimshon. Not be as
right. And then especially the learning should be zchut the refuah shlema of Moshe ben Yehudit Sarah. Should go through. He should see refuah shlema b'karov. So we start this week. This is Torah Yud Gimel of Parshat Balak in the Zera Shimshon. We were just talking about you. We were literally just talking about you.
Video will be up soon.
Oh my God, unbelievable. Hold on, everyone.
Yes, Jesse's in the house.
Check. Sitz's check. Okay.
Woo! Sitz's in there.
Okay, fine.
Tesla's
okay. Right. Okay. So this. Let's give him a. Okay. So in order to understand this Torah, the Torah Yud Gimel of the Zera Shimshon, we were going to read a pasuk from Sefer Dvarim. So Sefer Dvarim, it says Perek Kaf Gimel pasuk Vav. It says V'lo aba Hashem Elokech lishma Bilam. Hashem didn't want to hear what Bilam was saying. Vayafoch Hashem Elokech lechat haklala livracha. Ki ha'ivcha Hashem Elokech. Hashem flipped over whatever Bilam said. Hashem flipped it over from a curse to a bracha. That's what the bracha. That's what the pasuk says. It's about Yosef. I'm sorry, Moshe seems to be repeating, but Moshe at the end of his life, he repeats all that which happened throughout.
Talking about Bilam here, that Hashem switched it.
Right. So in the question, what's the Mefarshim asked? The first question, the Zera Shimshon says, Makshim Mefarshim, Te'echi tachen shaklala atzma tiyeh livracha. How could you even say that a klala will flip to a bracha? Like that's such a basic question. That's the Mefarshim. He doesn't say it right. Right? He's saying is the curse itself didn't actually become a blessing. Exactly. In other words, right? The only except for the one, which is Matov Alechi Yaakov, all the other klalot that Bilam gave never actually took place. So what are we saying? That Hashem flipped them over from a curse to a bracha? They never happened. They never took place. It wasn't like
Matov is a curse.
Matova was meant to be a curse.
What is it?
Matova is like he said it. He said a bracha, so it turned into a bracha. But all the other ones that he said, Matova, right? When you look at it as that was the only one that was really not really a curse. It was really a bracha. But the other ones, like you could understand them in some way that maybe they were meant to be a curse, right? Bilam meant to be a curse. So the question, the first will ask the question. But if a curse, you would say is what happens when a curse? You have to say that that if it was a curse, then Hashem could switch it. But they never really were curses. It wasn't really a curse. So he says, V'od ma'u tevat lecha. So if you look at the pasuk, it says, V'yafoch Hashem lokecha lecha. Right? And so Hashem says, flipped over for you. So the Zera Shimshon, the first question is, what does it mean to say that the bracha, that the klala, meaning the curse, will actually become a bracha? It never took place. So you can't say that he switched it. That's the first question the Zera Shimshon. I think that's what does the ArtScroll say there? Just to make sure I got the question right. What does the ArtScroll say in the introductory statement?
Says that Bilam was pleased to accept Balak's invitation to curse Jewish people, but Hashem told him, "You shall not curse Jewish nation because it is blessed." Ultimately, Bilam was forced to bless Jewish people instead of cursing them, as the passage goes on to say. In this Derush, Zera Shimshon explains how Bilam schemed to limit the effect of his blessings, right, and to curse the Jewish people in his heart. Okay. And he analyzes whether Bilam's mental curse had any significance.
Okay, now so now after the introduction he says
in his heart he was trying to curse, but his mouth was saying
that's right. What does he say? They're makshim. What does he say? The sages ask.
The commentators ask, how is it correct for the verse to say that the curse itself was transformed into the blessing when Bilam had never uttered any curse.
Right.
Even though it is true that Bilam's blessings corresponded to his intended curses,
Right.
nevertheless, his curses themselves were never turned into
Blessings.
Were not turned into blessings.
Right.
But there were no curses. So how could the verse say that?
Right, exactly.
Curses?
So he's saying, so the Mefarshim are asking, like, if you want to say that Bilam actually cursed Bnei Israel, then you could say that this pasuk makes sense because Hashem took the curse and flipped it into a blessing. But these brachot, these were never were curses, right? And what does Balak get upset about? Balak yells at Bilam, saying, "Is every time I tell you to curse Bnei Israel, you come out with the bracha." Right? That's what has happened. We know that's what happens, right?
Frustrating.
Right? It's frustrating, right? So then how could Hashem say, I switched over Bilam's intended statement when his the whole time he was saying brachot? How can we say that? And the second question the Zera Shimshon asks is, what is the word lecha, for you? Right? That simple question, why is the word lecha? If you read the pasuk, Vayafok Hashem lokecha et haklala. Right? We could read it without the word lecha. It makes sense. So I said, why do we have to have the word lecha at all? So he says here, so he says, in my opinion, my humble opinion, we have to understand that we need to have the word lecha. So it says here, right, you would think, right, we might have thought that because Bilam was blessing Bnei Israel, so he would want to get blessed too. So that's why the word lecha has to be said in there. Such a simple answer. He says, so Hashem says, why does Moshe say, because he says because to you specifically Bnei Israel, because otherwise what would we have thought? We would have thought that maybe Bilam, when he was saying the brachot, that he wanted a piece of the action too. He wanted the bracha too. So he says, Hashem says, no. Moshe says, Vayavoch Hashem lecha. Only for you. That's the answer. Simple answer of the why lecha. That's the answer number. In most of the time, the Zera Shimshon answers the question number 1 first, number 2 second. Here he answers number 2 first. He goes out of his order. Let's go back to now. He says here, Ubinyan hafichat klala libracha. This is why I chose. By the way, this is why I chose Torah Yud Gimel, because it's similar in some ways to what we learned about Torah, the previous one, Torah Dalet. So it says, Yes dakdek she'im navin hadavar kipshuto shamachshava haya mekalo ubefiv haya mevarech pshita she'en kan klala klal. So he says we have to understand. He says is that if we look at the things completely from the simple level, right? His thinking means machshava haya mekalel. His mind was to curse, right? Bilam's mind was to curse. Ubefiv, and his mouth was uttering brachot. Right? Pshita she'en kan klal. There's no curse. If we look at the words, just look at the words, forget anything else, we could see that Bilam is like concentrating his kavanah, curse Bnei Israel. But what comes out? A blessing. So then, therefore, there's no cursing. It's a bracha, right? So he says is that in general in the Torah, do I get punished for something that was in my heart? Right? Let's say I made a deal with you. All right? You and I made a deal. Right? I said, okay, I'm going to give you $100, $1,000. I'm giving you $1,000. I sell you my car for $1,000. Oh, here we go. We got a Tesla. We'll sell the Tesla for $1,000. Right? So I said, fine. We shake on it. Fine. Then he says back, you know what? Really, you owe me $5,000. He says, why do I owe you $5,000? Because in my heart I said $5,000. Can I charge you? Should I be giving you $5,000? Absolutely not. Why? Because Dvarim Shebalev, the halacha said Dvarim Shebalev, lo avu dvarim. They don't count. It means nothing. Right? It means nothing what I have in my heart. So whatever I say, whatever Bilam had in his heart, I had in my heart to curse, useless. Right? So he says, look at this, and he says, now he says, listen, okay, that sounds nice and everything, it's all good. Now I want to prove to you, maybe you're going to bring a proof from Nidarim. In Masechet Nidarim, Daf Kafchet Amud Aleph, it says, there's 3 cases in which, Gemara says that there are 3 cases in which a person can say something and mean something else, meaning I could say something in my heart and say something in my mouth two separate, meaning they're not the same, and I'm not chayav for lying. You would think that maybe he's chayav for lying. So the three cases are: I have a tax collector, right? If a tax collector comes to my, in the time of Gemara, tax collector comes to my house and says, "You owe me money," you can lie. Or a robber comes to your house, "Give me all your money," you can lie and say, "Take the money." Or possible murderer. Possible murderer.
What's a possible murder?
Meaning, so he says to you, "Give me all your money, I'm going to kill you." Right? A robber. Right? He says, "Take the money. Just take the money. It's all yours."
Yeah.
So you, right?
Oh, it's not his.
It's not his. It's not my money, right? I can say it's not my money. It's someone else's money, right?
No, even if I give it to him, it's not his, kiddo.
So he says here.
That's what the lie is.
1 second here. It says here, Kafchet Amud Aleph. It says here. Hold on 1 second here. I just found it here. It says here. Right, a tax collector. If the tax collector says that the long thing is okay, right? So the tax collector, does it say in article what is this there? I'm just finding it here. What does the article say? Can I see that for a second? Or you want to read it? That's it. Let's see how article explains it. He says here that Gemara says that potential victim can say a verbal. Oh, this is I wrote down my notes. Okay, a potential victim here. He says a potential victim can make a verbal vow saying, "I swear to you that," he says you can make a verbal vow even though in his mind.
You swear.
He can make a swear. He can make a shvuah.
Swear.
He can even swear. He can say, I can make a verbal vow saying, "Take all my money. I swear to you, I'll give you the money tomorrow," whatever it is. I can say to you something, and in my heart, I'm saying something else, right? And intend not to make the vow, to take the vow. In that case, it does work, right? In other words, he doesn't have to make the vow. You can say, "I swear to you that I'm going to pay you back tomorrow," or whatever it is. He can make that statement, and he's not chayav. Why? Because he's honest. He's considered an honest. So you might say.
So what are the three stuff? A tax guy,
a tax collector, a robber, and a potential murderer. Yeah. Right. So all those cases.
Can you apply that today to Masach Masar or no?
I don't know. Actually, in fact, you can't, because in one of the cases there, in the first, interesting that you said that Amarav Chinana, Amarav Kahana, the Hamar Shmuel Dina de Malchutay Dina.
So who's the opinion that says you could do it?
It says no, but moches means when a tax collector comes to your house, and forces you to give the money, then you can say to swear to you, you can say to this refers to a tax collector who has set a limit to the amount he collects, right? The king then does not apply to such a tax. When you say, you owe me $1,000, or let's see what he says here. We're just gonna say here. So the case, let me go with the case with the robber, just to make it a little easier. Let's say the robber comes to your house and says, "Give me all your fruit," or "Give me all your money." He says, "No, the money's not mine. It belongs to Hekdesh. It belongs to Beit HaMikdash." Right? So I'm saying it belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, but I know in my heart it's mine. So the robber so in the case where the robber
cares.
He
cares about the Hekdesh.
That's some robber.
By the way, that's one of the questions that they ask me tomorrow later on. The robber's going to really care. I mean, what's the big deal? The truth is, in those days, even the robbers understood the Beit HaMikdash.
Don't steal from God.
We don't mess with God, right?
Don't steal from the Godfather.
Right.
Everybody in the mafia knows don't steal from the Godfather.
So it says in that
maybe God from the big Mikdash will come after you, not me.
Other guys
will.
Right. It says here, basically, he says that, and in any case, only when you're really in mamash in a situation of onus can you make these kind of statements. So the Zera Shimshon says, it says here, it says as long as you don't say something that the Shulchan Aruch says on this halacha, he says on this Gemara, he says here, you have to say something that's within the gather of truth. Meaning, saying is, you can't say that something that's completely soter what's in your heart. You could say is, this money belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, right? You can't say all my money belongs to the Beit HaMikdash. Meaning, in my heart, I say this money, right? You need $1,000 or $10,000. Give me $10,000 or I'll kill you. So he says the money you want belongs to Beit HaMikdash. I'm not saying all my money. There has to be some sort of alignment between what you said and what's in your heart. If otherwise, it's not correct. In other words, otherwise, then you really are lying, right? So he's,
It's so crazy that the robber should more care about that. And you can't lie even to the robber.
right. So that's right.
It cannot be just
So
outright
there's
lie. It has
when
to
I
be
was
some
listening,
kind
I
of
was
a
listening,
modified truth.
I was listening to a shiur about this specific lesson, and the guys, there was so the question, there was the one who gave this shiur. I was listening to a shiur about this specific Torah, and he says there's a story about Rav Zilberstein. They have a question about Rav Zilberstein. Rav Zilberstein, he has all these stories that he has questions about stories that he's heard or maasim that people have asked him. So he said this husband, every time he comes home from his long day of work, his wife wouldn't cook. She'd come home and he'd get angry. He'd be like, I worked 12 hours. I come home. They're supposed to have dinner. Not home. And then whenever she cooks, it's not so good. So he doesn't want to eat and whatever. It causes arguments. So one day he gets smart. Right? One day he gets smart. He goes to the store. He sees a restaurant. And he's like, oh, beautiful. Before I come home, I'll get myself full. So whatever she serves me, of course, what happens? He sees a beautiful piece of steak. He goes to the restaurant. He eats the steak. He's full. He comes home, and she comes home, and there's a candlelight dinner, the whole thing, right? And what is she serving?
Steaks.
No, dairy.
No.
Now we have a problem. Can he say?
What?
Can he say, listen, shalom bayis, I should eat dairy, or should he tell her the truth?
No.
So most of the people would say
No, for shalom bayit you can't eat.
Right. So you can't do milk.
That's not one of the heterim.
Right. So the interesting Rav Zilberstein instead is the story that he tells, the Rav Zilberstein story in the halacha, Rav Zilberstein states that the guy ate the dairy. He ate the dairy. I guess in his mind it's not like shalom bayit. Right. So he says he says I probably otherwise there's gonna be other problems if I don't eat the dairy, right? So he says I eat the dairy.
Because nefesh tocheh kol haTorah.
Exactly. So he says, so maybe I should have lied. Right. So maybe in his mind he should have. Maybe I should lie a little bit and say, listen, I'm really not hungry. The guy at work served hot dog. Maybe I should make up a little story.
So what? How come you can just say I bought a hot dog sandwich on the way home?
No, because then she'd get offended saying, I prepared your dinner. How can you do that? So Rav Zilberstein says,
Watch a movie for us for 5 hours.
Exactly. Let's watch a movie for 5 hours. Anyway, so Rav Zilberstein says that in this case, he shouldn't have eaten the meat. Shouldn't have eaten the dairy. He says it's probably better. He should have said something or explained in a nice way and waited a little bit and then done it. But anyways, the point here, the question is, what can you do can you lie in some way, right? So could you in your heart say one thing, right? Let's go back to Bilam. Can you in your heart? Could Bilam said in his heart one thing? In the heart he had intended to curse, but in his mouth, his mouth came out brachot. That's right. His mouth came out brachot. In his heart he had klalot, right? So he says, "V'vach lo yotzim mipiv davar shel b'firish neged ma'ashel libo, v'lo shari ela kshe'omar b'libo hayom o kedoman lezeh b'fiv omer yasru kol ha'parashat b'olam alav im eno kach kamo shekatav Hashem hashach v'ayin sham." So he says here is the halacha is that, like I said, he has to qualify his statement. He says that, let's say the guy says, you have to give me 10,000, all your apples that you have in my house, you have in your house. The robber comes to your house, says, give me all the fruit. So he says, I'm giving you all the fruit. He says in my heart, he says, I can't eat them. Right? He says they're asur to me because they're hekdesh today. Right? Once I say today, then I've qualified it. So that way the next day, tomorrow, I'm not lying anymore. Right? So the qualifying statement is very important here when you're making these, when you're under onus, you have to, even when you're saying onus and you can say I can lie or I can bend the truth, bending the truth still has to be within the gather of, tell some sort of truth within the lie, if you will. That's what he's saying. So he says, now let's go back to Bilam. Right? After he saw that he was forced, basically, right? He was forced to give brachot to Israel. Dima din zel din anal din nodrim lanasim v'chashav b'libo she'otan habrachot shemotzi mipiv lo yitkamu el yom echad bilbad v'achar kach yhiu klalot. So he says, wait a minute, Bilam says the same thing. I'm forced, I'm an ones, so what am I going to do? I'm an ones, I'm going to say, okay, for today, the bracha counts. Tomorrow, I want the klala again. So he says, right, do you understand what he's doing? The Zera Shimshon is taking, he's saying is, maybe in his heart he had one intention, and in his mouth he had another. We know that, right? That's what he says. So he says is, we can look at it and say, maybe Bilam was thinking, maybe Bilam was thinking, today, God, okay, I got you. I'm an honest. So therefore what? I can lie today. I'll qualify my lie for today. You want to get bracha? You got the bracha for today. Tomorrow, put the kalot on. That's what Bilam is thinking. ודווקא במוחה שעושה נגד הדין, אז הם דברים של לבד בדברים. אבל אם הוא מוחה שנוטל מכס הראוי בדין הדמלכותא, אז לא שרי לדור בפה לחשוב בליבו היום. לפי שאין לו אדם להבריח המכס על מלכות, כמו שפירש רש"י שם. So he says, if we look at the Gemara there, later on in the Gemara, it says that a person who, a tax collector who is doing unlawful, meaning he's collecting the king didn't send him. He's just going. You see, the Jew sees the tax collector. He doesn't know whether the tax collector is actually being sent from the king. He's just tax collector.
In those days, they were also independent contractors.
Exactly. So right.
Like Chas v'Shalom, but lechavdim, the fundraisers.
Right. So you go there. So the guy tax collector says, knocks on your door. You see a tax collector. You don't know if he was sent by the king or not. He's wearing his official garb. You have no idea. So he says only when the tax collector is actually being sent by the king can you lie. But if he's just saying you owe me all your money, or you makes up a number, he says, well, I just paid. I don't care. He comes up with the whole thing. Then you have to say that in my heart, you can't make this statement anymore because he's not representing the king. He's representing himself, and therefore he's already proving that he himself is lying. Meaning the tax collector himself is lying. And therefore you can't lie. Okay. So he said the same thing. Hashem made it clear. What did Hashem tell Bilam? Turn the whole time.
This Torah is showing the riches of Bilam.
Right, exactly.
Really so much how much Hashem's that.
Exactly.
And I'm saying the bracha, that's what Hashem told me to do, but in my heart I hate you.
Exactly.
Even though Hashem is telling me now what to say and love you and bless you, in my heart's filthy and I hate you forever.
Right, so look what he says here. He says Bilam in his heart, Bilam said, I'm going to do against what Hashem told me. Hashem told him, don't go curse the Jews. Don't go. What are you doing? Don't go curse. And he did it anyways, right? He says here, look. This is why Hashem says, so he says, Hashem said...
he's saying, I don't mean the bracha, so it shouldn't be kayem.
Exactly.
I mean in my heart a klala. Vayafoch Hashem et a klala le bracha.
Exactly.
Nice.
So he says exactly. That's what he said. Exactly what he said.
Explain to it.
So what he's saying is, Bilam, we just proved, the Zera Shimshon just proved, that Bilam in his heart, he was saying curse. We'll go back to the beginning. In his heart, he was saying curse. In his mouth, he was saying blessings. Right?
Because he's being forced by God to bless.
Right.
Like the guy that's being forced to pay the thing, I don't really have to do it. I could follow my heart. My heart's saying, hey, I don't owe you money, you're cheating. So that's like that. Bilam, his heart hates the Jews, but Hashem's forcing him, he's anus to bless the Jews, so you think the blessing shouldn't work.
Right. Exactly. You think the blessing shouldn't work, why not?
To follow the heart. The real meaning of Bilam was to curse us. But Hashem manipulates
does it work?
But we just learned about Yaakov, Yitzchak blessing Yaakov, while meaning to bless Esau.
Right.
Still worked on Yaakov.
Right, because he said his Gam Baruch, you said, and at the end,
specifically
So he says here, look what he says. So he's saying is that Bilam, this whole time, Bilam said, okay, I'm anus, I'm considered forced. If I'm considered forced, then today,
I can say whatever.
I can say what I want, and tomorrow morning I want the curse to happen. Then he says, wait a minute, if I know, then Hashem told me, don't go curse the Jews. Hashem says that to him. The first aliyah, it says, don't go. And he goes anyways, because he says, wait a minute, I'm forced, right? He says, I'm forced. And he says, wait a minute.
I got it.
So you should think is that maybe because he says, I'm forced, or maybe because he says that Hashem told him not to do it, so he says, my heart, in Bilam's heart, he says, my heart is telling him curse.
Just like the guy that's being
the guy's being forced.
The guy's being forced. You could say something and not mean it. It doesn't mean anything.
Right. So that's what Bilam's
just like that. Bilam saying, I'm saying it, but it means nothing.
Exactly.
Because in my heart, I really want to curse them, but I'm being forced, so it doesn't mean nothing.
Right.
Hashem says, no. I'm gonna
He says,
flip your
your
words, even though you
Flip
mean
your
to curse. I'm gonna flip
Exactly.
it into a bracha.
That says here exactly. It says Macha shechashav libo shabrachot shenoten ba'ones lo yitkamu klal adar. Right. Kedamira b'midrash al pasuk v'shamar Hashem lokecha lecha. Amar Yishmael bar Nachman kol ma sheYisrael ochlim b'olam hazeh eno elo mikoach habrachot shebercham bilam harasha aval ma sheberchot otam avot mishmut en latzad avot. So he says here, if you look, it says is that exactly what he said. Is what Yaakov, what Hashem said is Bilam had in mind, in his heart, he had in his heart to curse. So even though he said blessings, he had in his heart to curse. So Bilam's saying, wait a minute, I'm considered Hashem's forcing me to bless. So maybe I'm considered, so then maybe the brachot won't ever happen. Right? I'm going to be forced. So he says, no, Hashem says, I know your true intentions. I told you not to go. You went anyways. Here, I'm going to show you. I'm going to take Vayafoch Hashem lecha et haklala libracha. Right? I'm going to flip over the bracha the klala that you had in your heart. I'm flipping it to a bracha to make sure people see that I really understand your intentions. Right? There is a statement, I think he says later on, I don't remember what the article says there. There is such a thing that there is a midrash, I believe, that says that there at some point the klalot did actually take effect. So how can you say that? Right? If Hashem turned these klalot into brachot, how can we say that the klalot ever took place? Good question. Right? So he says here, there's it is. Okay, Gemara in Sanhedrin says.
Yeah, the Gemara shows that all these stuff actually did come true.
Exactly.
All these brachot really were curses.
Right. Okay, so he says is that maybe according to the Gemara says that the curses did actually take place, except for which one? That's the only one. So he says we can say is that maybe there is such a thing to say that there is klalot. There's a hint of klalot in them. Right? So he says is now we can understand if we look in a different Torah that he mentions. He says is that Balak and Bilam went to certain places. They went to certain places where Bnei Israel were going to in the future sin, and they said, wait a minute, we know that they're going to sin here, so therefore we want the curse to. But we know that. Let's use an example that happens in this week's parsha, Midian, right? We know they're going to curse. We know they're going to sin in Midian, so Hashem cursed them here for what they're going to do. That's not a Jewish thing. Right? If Bilam So Hashem says.
You buy it on Karkis.
Exactly.
You pay for it.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. He says, "Well, I want you to buy." Bilam is saying, "God, listen. I'm telling you now, they're going to sin here. So now let's take the curse. Pay it forward." He's asking to pay it forward. You can't do that. Hashem says, "No, I can't. You can't do that because what could always happen? They do tshuva. Hashem never punishes." Right? Hashem never punishes someone for what they're gonna do. Right? He only punishes you for something that you actually do.
Minority Report.
Right. Hashem doesn't punish us for things that we're gonna do. Right? So he says is Hashem. What he's saying is that Bilam's intentions were in his heart.
Bilam was seeing days that were going to go off track.
Right, and
he's those days to curse us.
And then he's saying is Hashem, pay it forward now. Give the brachot, give the klalot now.
Shelve it for now.
Right.
Speed it out.
So Hashem said, okay, only for that day though. Those days.
Right. Only the day when they sin, I'll punish. But on the rest of the days,
it's all going to be brachot.
They're all brachot.
Right.
Very, very nice, right?
Exactly.
Right. So he said there's. I think it's the Bat Ayin. He talks about the Matov Alech Yaakov. He says that's like I have to look at the whole. He says it's a wonderful thing. But even just looking at what Rashi says about Matov Alech Yaakov. Oh, that's what it is. Matov Alech Yaakov B'Shkotech Yisrael. The Bat Ayin says that the Matovu
But Ayin?
Bat Ayin, not the place. Bat Ayin.
Mamash, but Ayin.
Bat Ayin.
Not-
There's the
There
name
was
of
a
a city.
rabbi in Tzfat called Batayin.
Yes, that's
I
right.
did not
That's
know.
what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So he mentions the Bat Ayin. He says
Actually, Batayin is named after
after
him.
him. Right. The Bat Ayin. So he says that it's Avram Dov Avrich is his name. Avram Dov is the gematria of Avram Dov is Bat Ayin.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know that.
Ah, it's a gematria.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gematria of what?
Bat Ayin is the same gematria as Avram Dov, which is his name. Anyway, so he says there the Matov Alach Yaakov is that the tzniut that they had, right? Rashi, what does Rashi say? That their tents didn't face each other, because when Jews who are really really holding each other, it's tzniut. They're even with everything that they do is with tzniut and anava, and he says that's how great they are. That's why that's the one bracha they always stay is because they're anava. And what keeps us going is the Torah, mitzvot, and the anava that we have in front of other people, in front of Hashem. That's what keeps us going. And that's why Matov Alach Yaakov is different than all the other brachot, kalot, whatever it is. Anyway, so back to this, he's saying is that Bilam always had this intention, saying is, first, Hashem, you're telling me that I'm forced. If I'm forced, so then what my heart intention, what my intention was to curse, so therefore I'm speaking one thing, but I'm saying another. It means nothing. So Hashem says, okay, if you think that's the case, wrong. So your intention was to curse. Vayafoch. That's why the Dvarim, Sefer Dvarim, Moshe says, Vayafoch Hashem lachata klala livracha. He says, flips it over. He says, even your intention, Bilam, I'm going to flip over. And maybe we're going to say is, wait a minute, maybe these curses did take place. We have a Gemara that says that they did take place. So he says, wait a minute, if you say that they did take place, what would Bilam want? Bilam said is, I know they're going to sin here. So Hashem, curse them on the day that they're going to sin. Pay it forward. Right, like we say, right? So Hashem says, no, I'm going to give them the curse on the day that it takes place, because I have to give them a punishment in some way, but I'm not going to punish them for generations and generations, only for that day, for that moment, because the rest of the time I'm not punishing people for the future of what they did. I only punish them on what they do now. I'm not punishing them forever. So Bilam's curse, just for that moment of sin, we get punished, but the rest of the time it's a bracha.
This is the Efter Rebbe says. The Efter Rebbe says.
Shkoyach, shkoyach.
"Matovu ohalecha